The other thing I just wanted to note, there's this interesting slide in here about why, on page 5, which shows that we at least can learn from our experiences. And one of the reasons that we have gone a lot to design, build, and to construction manager, general contractor style contracts is the experience that we had on the west side, where we had initially very low cost bids, low bid, but very high change orders. And if you look at the percentages on many of the west side contracts, they were probably average in the 20% range. And we also found that they were very hard, those low bid contracts are very hard to achieve sort of the expanded agency goals of budget certainty early on. Certainly the change order percentage is a piece of that. Completing on time and with minimal disruption. And what we have found is that how these projects get constructed is a very important piece. I think the mall was the best lesson on that. And that we gain a lot of goodwill with those around us if we can really pay attention to how it's being constructed, and we listen to our neighbors, so that was important to them. And finally, the whole diversity program works very well with these collaborative programs. And I think what our key objective is really to bring the contractor in as a team member early on, because we find they add a lot of value to the design process and to the creation of the highest value project that we can for the public. Our results on this is, on top of page 6, is that if you look at some of our biggest CMDC contracts, you actually see change order percentages in the 2 to 3 to 4% range. Compare that to what we experienced on the west side, begin to see a very major difference in budget certainty that we can achieve at an earlier stage of the project.
Is there a reason, by the way, that 3.4 on the mall is in red? Is that still under?
Because we're not done.
Not done yet.
Yeah, we still have closeout on that, and so we're not at the stopping point. So again, mostly this was just a general review of how we go about looking at the project, breaking it into pieces, breaking it into contracts, deciding how to achieve what the best contracting form is to achieve our objectives. And again, the board would be asked for actions and approvals at the point where contract exemption may be necessary, and that's anytime we don't do low bid. If we do design build, if we do CMDC, the board would be asked as a contract review board for authority in that regard. And then also at the award of the contracts after they've been advertised and we've gone through the selection process. So to note that those answers will begin to come to you. We've included a fairly long table, probably longer than you want to go through, of the actions that you'll be seeing over the life of the project, and this is probably only the major ones. Again, for every contract, there's either an exemption, an award note. The first category, preliminary engineering, you see the check marks, which essentially means we've done those already. But we do have a number of final design contracts that will be coming next summer and fall, and then the construction contracts with exemptions coming again in summer and fall of next year, with the exception of the bridge, which will be later this month.
Would you also outline, because it's first you as the board have to obviously decide what kind of contract we do. We recommend that, and you generally impact of agree. The second is the award of the contract, and under that. But then there are oftentimes a number of actions taken even within that contract. Maybe you could explain a little bit more about how those pieces come and what you will be actually taking action on.
Right. So in some cases, we actually award the contracts in various pieces. So, for example, sometimes there's an award for design, and then a related, if you will, as we call it in business, notice to proceed related to construction. So there may also be a pre-construction phase that we award for in our CMGC contracts. That's typical. And then later we come back to you and negotiate, after we have negotiated a full price for the work, and you actually approve the contract at that stage. So sometimes these are not one-stop shopping. I think that was Fred's point related to the contract, but we take them in phases, and then we bring the actions to the board as the phases ripen as the technical work proceeds. And needless to say, there are occasional those change orders that you see as well at the end of toward very best to avoid those, but we're not always with 2020 foresight in every item.
On the change order, is there a contingency that we carry, or the contract, we allow the contractor to carry? How does that?
And typically, when we do our CMGCs, we have a combination. So we do carry some ourselves as only contingency that only we control. We often also include a contingency internal to the contract. And often that's allocated to the contractor based on something we call a risk taking. And oftentimes we can identify, for example, additional utility relocations, for example, that may be required. And it may be as an item that we just don't know before we open up the ground. And so we try to negotiate in advance what it will cost if there's an extra 100 feet of water pipe to relocate, or what the unit cost of that would be. And then we sort of bracket that and set that money aside within the contract. And then we can just simply allocate that as the risks are actually achieved or not as the contract is performed. So.
Neil, did you see any in the checklist of any cost savings? I don't want to say savings, but either escalating or I would hope going down.
Our history, and of course, every project has its own personality, but our history is that during the final design phase, when we bring the contractors in, we have found a number of efficiencies. One of the key ones, for example, in the mall was, you might remember, the aspiration to have brick intersections in key areas. And if we had designed that at the start, we probably would have specified what you see down there on Morrison Yamhill now, which is the cemented in brick. And through really an exercise, it was a collaboration between the contractor and the design team, came up with a very different design, which is the sandset pavers, which is so far performing very well. And that was at a major cost saving. So it really, frankly, made those brick intersections affordable. But that wouldn't have been done, I don't think, without the collaboration of contractors and design things. That's one example. Yes, Lisa.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yep, go ahead. I was just thinking of the market, if you're starting to see any changes there.
We are, and in subbidding, the most recent project, we're not directly hands-on in it, but watching it very closely is the Portland streetcar loop. And the CMGC for that is actually came in a couple $1 million under budget, or $80 million sort of cost. But we felt that they were getting incredibly competitive subbids, and I think that's what we're seeing in particular is that the subbid market where the electricians and the utility workers the margins are very thin on subcontractors.
Do we have a general on this already, or are you just,
I'm explaining the process by which we will find them.
Oh, okay. And CH2M, is that a local company?
Yes. They have a local office. They were actually established in Corvallis, Oregon, but their headquarters are down Denver, Oregon. Very large.
Denver, Oregon?
I'm sorry, Denver, Colorado.
Oh.
And then,
go ahead.
Yeah. Very large Oregon presence. So.
Really out of Oregon State University, and that's where all of those CH and
Yeah.
Okay. I'd seen that name before, so I was wondering if they were local.
Yeah. Very good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.